Welcome back. So today we're going to be working on a flower bed for the front of the property here. We do mostly in-ground gardening for the most part. We've done a few little flower beds, but this is going to be the first time we're doing growing vegetables this year in a raised bed. So I want to go ahead and show you where we kind of did last year first. All right, so last year we experimented first with using metal for a siding on a bed. Basically, we started out with a cattle panel. This is a cattle panel. Cattle panel has been cut in half here, and once it's cut in half, you curl it in onto shape. This was more of a round shape here, which was very difficult to get perfectly round or close to it. This one over here was more of an oval shape. So trying to accomplish getting more of a kind of a wider bed on this one here. It's really more like a football shape, to be honest with you. But and the interesting thing about this, we put it somewhere else last year, and we were actually able to relocate it pretty easy. I mean, it took 10 minutes to pull it up and put it somewhere else, other than the fact of moving all the wood in there. That's why the plants are not very happy right now. But one of the key things, if you're going to go this route, is the way you fasten it. You see right here? Now this one still needs one more. This is one I'm still working on. But basically, once you bend the cattle panel into shape here, you're actually getting some wire. This is a pretty heavy duty wire, and you actually bend it around it a couple of times. So that way, and then like over here you see I've got 2 times, one time there, one time there. All right, so on this one, you can see where the double is here. There is a lot of weight pushing against this, and it's not really attached in any shape or fashion. It's just basically pushing against it. Now I did put some screws to kind of put put it together. This is actually screws made for metal roofing. You can use other screws as long as they have like a washer behind them or something to kind of hold them together. Mainly because you got to have something to kind of hold it together, hold the metal together when you put the wood in there to kind of so it doesn't fall in. And once it's once you get enough wood in there, it'll start, and wood and the wood chips and compost and everything, which we'll go more detail on that later, it'll start pushing out. So that's why it's really important to have some really heavy duty wire to hold all that together, as you can see here. And now the sharp ends of this that was cut are in the ground. That kind of keeps it stable when you're first working with it too. All right, so now the downside of this, it's got sharp edges. Now some people do get like a water hose. Like if you have an old water hose, you can make a little cut down it, kind of wrap around it and put a little zip tie around it. That may be something I'll do later on. We don't have too many kids here all the time, so yeah, we just know not to put our hand on top of it. But the next thing we're going to be doing is similar to this. We're using the metal and keep in mind this is metal. It's usually designed for houses, so it's already pre-painted, so it's not going to be rusting. You could get by with using, a lot of people doing these kind of things with the shiny metal. Yeah, I know it's aluminum or whatever, or galvanized, but this just seems to be better. It's already painted. I think it's going to last a lot longer. All right, it's painted on both sides. But now we're going to be doing more of a rectangular shaped bed, and this is going to be, the goal is going to be 4 foot by 16 foot. A couple other people I've seen do several designs on this. More so recently was, I'll give the credit where it's due, would be Roots and Refuge. And check out their YouTube channel on there. They have a bed that Maya, I believe his name is, did a whole video on how he made his. I am going to make some modifications. I feel like it'll be improvement for what we need. One of the things to save money, and we'll see this in more detail, the top railing and the stuff doing a 1x6, we're going to do a 2x4. And we don't pressure treat 2x4 all the way around it. Yes, I know it's chemicals, but the good thing is that the metal is one thing touching the wood, and I know the pressure treat is going to last longer, and it's what's more readily available in your average Home Depot and Lowe's is going to have pressure treated compared to trying to get cedar post. All right, but if you want to spend the extra money, hey, go with a cedar post. That's great. The screws we're doing, these are 1-inch self-tapping They got like a flat head on them. It kind of like, it saves you from having to use a washer on them. So these are going to be really good for attaching the metal to the wood. And for all the wood junctions, 3-inch. I always do the star bit drills. They're coated, so they're not going to less likely to rust. All right, so here we got it. That's our area that we're going to be doing it here. So at least I have an idea of what we need. I could use a shovel and gravel rake for the whole thing to kind of level it out, but I'm going to bring a tiller in and we'll just kind of till it up. That'd be a lot easier to level out. So now we're at my chop saw. That's what I call it. Some people call it something different, miter saw or whatever. Anyway, I call it chop saw. So now first off, we got to measure these boards. Sometimes 2x4s by 8s are not 8 foot long. So we got to measure it because we want them right in the middle. Try to do the least amount of cuts as possible. And of course, I understand, and you'll see when we get out there, this means the bed's not actually going to be 4 foot wide. It will be a little short on that, but that's okay. We're just trying to make least amount of cuts. The only other cuts we'll have to do really is going to be the top rails on the end also. So it's really not that much. If you don't have fancy saws, you could do this with a jigsaw or a circular saw, whatever you have. So safety gear on, and we'll cut these in half. Now, this is not safe. It would be good to have something over there, but I'm going to hold it down until I can grab them so that they don't fall. All right, then we'll take this back and put the two sides together. All right, so the next thing is when we go back out to the bed, you'll see in a second, it's really wobbly. There's no way it would hold the weight from the inside pushing to the outside. So we are going to put some metal poles in the ground. I don't have any fancy equipment, just on a hammer. This is the railing that you use on like a galvanized fence, the top railing. I had an old one and I'm just cutting this down. Probably going to go in the ground about 1.5 feet, something like that. So I got this 3 foot section I'm going to cut in half. Yeah, that's a lot faster than using any other kind of tool I can think of to cut this. So now we have 2 of them, and we're just hammering them in the ground on both sides. All right, I am going to have to drill a hole in this to attach it to the 4x4s. So one thing that would make this a lot easier to do that is to go ahead and hammer an area flat on this, like a little indention. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Just using something like a hard surface, like a rock. As you can tell, it's really wobbly. There's no way that would hold up any stress. So that's why we're putting the post in the ground. Got the end to kind of flatten a little bit. Gonna leave that part sticking out. Putting it right in the corner. So I drilled 2 holes in there. I use the same 3-inch screws. I'm going to keep an eye on those. I think we need some really long screws or some wide aggressive threads because they seem to be kind of iffy. And we'll see if they loosen up. If so, they're going to be on the outside. They could always be replaced. All right, but now at this point, we're kind of on to the next part of cutting the middle. So the height of the bed is 2 foot. One of my concerns is if we run into something like a hard surface, and then if I'm not able to, and if it comes up to the top of the bed, that's going to be a sharp object kind of sticking up on the top, even if we do put a panel on there or if we don't. So I'm going to make mine just about a 1/4 of an inch, or maybe even 1/8 of an inch shy of 2 foot, because I want to make sure that sharp edge is not going to be above the bed, which we'll show you that in more detail later. But anyway, what I'm done, so the tools we need for cutting this is going to be an angle grinder. This is with a 4.5-inch wheel. You wouldn't want anything smaller than that. This is electric. They make cordless ones also, of course. Then a drill is for the screws, tape measure, and of course safety glasses, and also hearing protection. All right, so that's and then I got 2 tables set up and a board for it to go on top of, and then another board to go on top of the metal, and that way we'll have a guide to go by. Then we're going to make a mark just shy of about 2 feet. Then I can mark over here, and I'm going over here somewhere too, doing the same thing. All right, now this mark needs to be on this side of the board. That's where the blade's going to be cutting. I don't want to go too far. Yeah, it's about an inch or so past it. And same thing over there. Now this is just some scrap wood. It don't have to be exactly this shape here, but basically you're making an L shape. Like if you had two 2x4s, you could have one here and one here, and that would basically be enough for this kind of a jig or a guide that we're going to be using. This is just plywood I had laying around, so that's why I'm using it here, and I just use this to attach it all together. But we're laying this on top here. All right, now if we come over to here, you can see we got to we can't have this right on top of there because we have the width from the blade to here, and this is not plugged in, by the way, right now. So we got to make sure that that's going to be really close to where the blade is going to be cutting. There we go. Same thing over here. Push that in just a little bit. Okay, so that's close enough. So the goal is here as I'm cutting, I'm going to be pushing this against the board the whole time while I'm going all the way up. Don't try to do one cut going this way and another coming back. I've already tried that, and what happens, the chances of them being in the middle at the same spot, pretty slim. All right, now what's holding this down? You could clamp this. I've actually been screwing it down. Yes, it does make a hole, but guess what? You need holes in this, just at the top, just screw it onto the inside the bed anyway. So now I have pre-drilled holes. Of course, this is going through this and made a hole through that, and then going through the wood on the bottom. Another reason that wood's there, so I don't screw into the table. All right, now this one, I'm doing one over here. I have 3 screws on this one. This one's not actually on the middle. This is just going to help stabilize it. Make sure it doesn't move. And then this one more to stabilize it. This will make another hole. And actually, we don't really want a hole in the hump. So I'm going to move this one over to here. And actually, that one needs to go in a little bit because that's going to miss the wood. Now you just don't want to go down too far away from the edge, because then that pre-drilled hole you're making is not going to line up with the bed. All right, now that we got all the metal cut, we're gonna be putting it together. It's important to make sure you overlap this correctly. You'll see how there's a little lip there, and this one don't have a lip. So when you overlap them, you gotta make sure the parts are lined up correctly. All right, now we got everything attached. Now we're gonna be filling it up. The key thing here is some people fill this all the way up with dirt. It's not needed. We fill ours up with logs. My mom's a horticulturalist. Talking with her, we need about 10 to 12 inches of good soil for the vegetables to grow in. So that gives us about another 12 inch of logs that we can put in, logs and sticks and wood chips. I did have another bed that I did this on, and when I dug it up about a year later, the wood was really moist, and it wasn't like moldy. It was just like, it looked like good, solid, moisture water. It wasn't like it didn't smell bad or anything. So it actually does work good, especially when the roots get down deep. They can actually get some more moisture from the logs and everything. All right, so we're gonna start filling in with some big logs in the middle. As long as we keep it below about 10 and 12 inches, we'll be good. And then we'll start doing some wood chips and compost and everything on top of it. So as you can tell, we got a pretty good layer of wood in here. We tried to kind of like play in Legos or Tetris, I guess, trying to get everything to fit in here together. But now it's just going to be using wood chips or chopped up wood. If we had a bunch of limbs, we could. Don't really have much limbs. So we're just going to be kind of leveling this out with wood chips, and then after that we'll put compost on top, and save the older, really good compost, almost like topsoil for the very top. Alrighty. So we ran into a problem. I was concerned of this with it being long as a bed as it is. If it was going to be able to not bow, and it did. So after we put in some compost, added some water, and it kind of spread down and settled, it definitely spread out more in the middle. Even though I got these metal posts in the ground, the only thing I could have maybe done different on the metal posts was if they were longer. I had some concerns about water line being buried nearby here, so as far as it is deeper. Or maybe even put another 4x4 in the end. We're going to fix this now. This run should be cheaper, I feel like, than buying more metal posts to put in the ground in 4x4s. This is the actual size here. You can see what it is on the ends. And we go down here, that is a huge spread that we already got. And this is only after a couple of days of settling. So we got pre-drilled some holes in these 2x4s. I got some really long bolts here, lag bolts with a nut on the end of it. And then we're just going to put two of these in here, one here and one over here. And these are long enough that we should be able to clamp it together while we're pushing also. And we'll squeeze that together. A lot easier to fix it now than trying to go back a year from now and fix it, which has got even more soil in it. So, definitely want to do this ahead of time. I would assume there's going to be close between 2 to 3 tons worth of material in here, based upon the load that we got to finish filling it up here. The problem we had with this whole design, I feel like there is a design flaw in the fact of the bowing aspect. Now, granted, if I didn't jump around on it like a monkey, that probably wouldn't happen quite so bad. But my goal with walking in it, whenever I had it halfway filled up, was primarily to make sure that it was settled, because I know it's going to settle over time. And that probably would prevent it from bowing out. It was a 5-inch difference in the middle than on the ends. But however, my feeling is, if it didn't happen now, it's going to happen eventually over time. You know, gravity's always been pushing in. You're going to be adding more material on top of it. So this was a lot of work. This isn't perfect. It is a temporary fix. We got some lag bolts put in each side of these 2x4s here. Got to make sure we clear out the dirt so they're not touching it, because it's all pressure treated. We don't want that contaminating our dirt. And that brought in about 3-4 inches. But that, if I build in the next one we build, it's going to be 2x6s, and we're going to be using, instead of 1/2-inch lag bolts, we'll be using 5/8 of an inch, because the 1/2 inch we're actually stripping out. All right, so it'll be we would do a 2x6, maybe a 2x4, but we would definitely do a 5/8 inch lag bolt, the 6 inches long on both sides, and then put on each side of that some long wood screws too, to just stop it from spinning around. That would be a lot easier to do before you put material in it, but I'm too lazy and didn't want to take everything back out of it. So that's why it was so hard for us on that. If this was an 8-foot bed, I think it would be fine. You can see there's a little bit bowing here, even on the 8-foot part, but I think it would be all right. Glad we went with 2x4s instead of a 1x4. I think 1x4 would just crack. All right, I mean, unless you got some awesome wood. So definitely want a 2x4 on the sides, because you can see some bowing already happening here. Anyway, we didn't have enough compost, or good compost, so we live in High Point. So there's a in the High Point municipal place where people take limbs and stuff. They actually have what they call engineered topsoil, and their engineered topsoil. So this is my compost. This is my really good compost. So pretty close. Engineered on the left side here. So basically they had this big grinding machine that they were putting wood chips in, and then they would just grind it up and making topsoil out of it. I know my compost is going to be better. So we put about 6-8 inches of this engineered topsoil in there, and then put about an inch of our compost our good compost on top of it. That way we have some more nutrients and everything in there. But technically this could be done. You do not have to put like a 2x6 or 2x4 on top of this. Now we are going to do that eventually, just kind of so we have somewhere to sit on or to get into the bed without getting near the sharp edges. But at this point, that's basically done there on that part. All right, so if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer. Just keep in mind, if you're making this yourself, hopefully watch the whole video. You know, before you put material in it, make sure you do some supports in the middle to screw it together, stop it from spreading apart. All right, other than that, I think it'll work. Thanks for watching.